Thank you very much for having us here. I'm not going to read my testimony. You all have that. I'm taking for granted. I'd like to touch on, I'm Walter Schartner, Superintendent, Sayville Public Schools. Just a bit of background. This is my 41st year in education, 36th in Sayville, 26th in administration. So I've seen a few changes. I'd like to piggyback on a lot of the earlier testimony, and starting with the Common Core learning standards. From what I'm hearing from our teachers and from most of the teachers, as well as my wife, who's a teacher, going on Facebook to many of her sites, the Common Core might not be the devil. New York State modules and domains that script what teachers, very, very successful, highly effective teachers do, is the problem. Now, I know Mr. Graff has. I hope everybody else has a chance to go on to Engage New York and look on how scripted these modules are in terms of the first 2 minutes do this, the next 8 minutes do this. It's an insult to our teachers on Long Island, as well as through the whole state. I've been to enough Common Core workshops and heard how comprehensive, rigorous, and sequential they are. To me, that just reaffirms the fact that the way in which New York State Education Department is rolling these out is nothing more than educational malpractice. If you're going to build curricula, you're going to start from the bottom up with a foundation, just like you're building a house. It's not rocket science. If you don't have that foundation built, you're not going to build much of a house. What you're doing by throwing this K through 8 is you're immediately creating educational gaps in the learning of these students. And that's why you hear that they're not successful on these tests. They haven't been taught the material because the State Education Department has created gaps in their learning and forced our teachers to do what they know is not the right thing to do. And that's why you hear about the excess stress that these children are under. And the stress that the teachers, where you take these very poorly designed tests on material that the students don't know, and then, oh, by the way, we're going to evaluate teachers on this and affect their livelihood. New York State testing. This is the Pearson Fund. The worse our kids do, the wealthier Pearson gets. And then college and career ready. Well, the commissioner and the deputy commissioner, for a year before that first Common Core test, said you can expect about 1/3 of the students to be proficient. And guess what? 1/3 of the students were proficient. Gee, I wonder if that was an accident or that was the cut points that the commissioner picked. It's an arbitrary cut point. If you want to look at college and career proficient, look at our graduating seniors throughout Long Island that are going to the best universities that don't need 63% remediation in community college. We don't have 63% of the kids going to community college. Our students are very successful. Another example, which is in my testimony, has to do with the 8th grade at Sayville Middle School. Half of our 8th graders take the Algebra 1 Regents exam. Out of those 125 students, 125 passed, 12 didn't get 80 or better. Well, guess what? 80 or better is the state's measure for college and career proficient at the high school level. So in essence, 49% of our 8th grade students at Sayville Middle School going into high school already have met high school proficiency for college and career ready. But only 31% of them were proficient in 8th grade. What happened to the other 18% that are high school proficient but not 8th grade proficient? Maybe there's a little problem with their measures. The next stressor, which unfortunately I don't hear enough about, is the PARCC tests. They are supposed to be implemented in 2015, next year. Those are computerized tests, or you can do the non-computerized test. Oh, and by the way, I believe it was Roberta, or her board president, that mentioned the hours that these kids were being tested in ELA and Math Now. By the way, the PARCC tests are longer. We just heard that at ASCD from State Ed. Plus, they're given in 2 sittings. One in April, one in June. A lot to look forward to. And they're also supposed to be more expensive. I wonder who's picking up the tab on that. Which brings me to the next piece, which is cost. Sayville is about 3,400 students. About 1,438 took 3 through 8 testing. It cost us about $250,000 a year, because we have to print the tests. The state just gives us a file. We have to implement the tests. We have to grade the tests, and of course we have to send them out because the teachers aren't trusted to grade their own tests. And then we have to enter that data into the state data system, which is another issue. I won't go there now. We have staff development for Common Core learning standards. Not even in that. Infrastructure for PARCC, not even in that. And by the way, I happened to be at the NISCUS Superintendent's Convention in September, and on Monday, September 23rd, Dr. King was the keynote speaker, and his statement was that New York State pays a lower percentage on state testing than most states. Well, guess what, Dr. King? The reason that is because you're putting the cost on the local school districts. And honestly, we can't afford it and keep the programs under a tax cap. APPR high-stakes testing do not improve instruction. And they are crazy expensive. I encourage you to have the state do a cost analysis on how much it costs throughout the state to implement these and see what effect it has on the education of students. I already know what effect it's going to have on the education of students. It's going to be negative effect. But do it yourselves. Get an independent group to do it. I strongly recommend that we slow down immediately on the implementation of the Common Core learning standards and go back to the way in which the last time we put new standards into the state, where it took 3 years, where we had the information, the teachers sat down, were able to develop curriculum, and then they thought about testing after the teachers had 2 years to implement that curriculum. Novel idea. Another common theme that's with us too is we need to end this one-size-fits-all for education. We have students that we should encourage to go to college and go on to professions from there. We have students that we should encourage to go into trades and take their appropriate licensing tests. Right now, unless these career and technical education students jump through the college and career ready hoops, they cannot get a diploma. They have a new certificate. But guess what's on the first thing on most applications? Do you have a high school diploma? Their answer will have to be no, unless they have a career and technical education diploma. Once again, and this is in my testimony, Sayville High School, which is a culmination of kindergarten to 12th grade, was rated by Newsweek to be in the top 1.8% of high schools in the country. We have Siemens Award winners, semifinalists. We have Intel semifinalists. And on Long Island, we have more than most states. But yet, we all need to seem to follow the same rules. And personally, we weren't broke, so don't try to fix us.